Noah Basketball is our new presenting sponsor of our Coaching You podcast. Noah Basketball is a shot tracking and data company that has helped change how coaches and players perfect the game's most important skill, shooting. Noah is a data service provider that uses machine learning and the latest computer vision technology to provide real-time data and feedback to improve shooting accuracy and consistency for professional and amateur basketball players. Noah has now analyzed over 570 million shots from countless high school, hundreds of college teams, and 28 NBA franchises. The technology is simply amazing. Once the system has been installed, players will be able to get immediate feedback on their shooting arc, left and right positioning, depth, makes or misses, and makes the data available to players and coaches on your mobile device. For more information about how Noah can help your team, visit noahbasketball.com. Hey, welcome to another Coaching You podcast with the Coach Brendan Suhr, presented by Noah Basketball. Let me tell you, we have just come off a few days in Orlando where we put on, I would call it a legendary event, and legendary by the point of the people that spoke and the lives we touched. I've told you before, our mission at Coaching You is to really help coaches get better. And in turn, if we help coaches get better, our players are going to get better, and our game's going to get better. We had an opportunity down in Orlando to put together some of the greatest college coaches over a day and a half period. And when I tell you the coaches that were there, I still have goosebumps thinking about it as it's coming out right now on our Coaching You Plus app. But Zach is with me here. And Zach, why don't we talk about, besides Gannon Baker, who's one of the best player development coaches in the world? You know, he's up there with Joe Bunassar, our friend Drew Hanlon. I mean, these are world-class guys. Gannon Baker, he's a stud. But other than Gannon, let's talk about some of the college coaches that were there.
No, for sure. And like you said, it was a great lineup. And it's awesome. You know, we had, 7 Final Four coaches in this lineup, after adding Matt Painter right there leading up to the event. But every one of them were just so willing to share. Nothing was off limits. It was very similar to a lot of things we run into with the NBA guys, right? There was no privacy. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. Here's why we do it. And they were just so great, taking all the time to come and share with everybody in attendance. You mentioned Gannon. Gannon gets things going right off the bat. With some stuff on decision making and great on the player development side of things, and then from here you got into Kim English, who is a stud, by the way, absolute stud. So much substance to him. Kevin Keats, one of your good friends, followed it up there with some stuff that I don't know if either one of us have seen on pressing, and really talked a lot about his journey as well. And kind of being persistent and not being afraid to put yourself out there. He went from being a prep school coach to now a Final Four head coach in 10 or 12 years time. It's just remarkable. And then you get into Kelvin, living legend. You made the comment. You took what an awful lot of notes.
During 4 pages of notes, and I've coached against Kelvin in the NBA and in college. I've known the guy for 20 years. My God, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, I love that. Oh my God. It was nugget after nugget, and an hour plus. Of just he was in just teaching these high school coaches, young coaches, how to become better. And then John Calipari and I have known each other forever, and John Calipari is just so energized right now, moving from Kentucky, 15-year incredible career at Kentucky. You know, every single year he had a player drafted in the first round in 15 years. This year he'll have two.
Think about that.
Yeah, and minimum of two. And let me say this about Cal. Cal has always been, to me, he understands the business of coaching and of college basketball is good or better than anyone else. He has a PhD in the business of coaching basketball. And he is so excited right now. He is going to absolutely do great there. And then Chris
he had a great line.
Yeah,
let's say that. So I want to make sure we share. One, to your point about him knowing the business, every coach in the country should thank him for where the salaries and the size of staffs have gone since he stepped foot in Lexington. And it probably goes back further than that. But he's had such an impact on that and the growth of the game across the board. He's phenomenal. But he had a great line during his presentation. And, you know, he's, to your point, he's very self-aware in terms of he was open. He said, man, it was time. It was a great 15-year run at Kentucky, but it was time. He said, but I also knew I wasn't done. I had more to give. I want to impact 20 more families. Once I can impact 20 more families, then we can talk about it. But until I do that, I'm not done. And I found that awesome in the moment whenever he said it.
You know, at the college level, Zach, you know, we coach players. We know that we're coached and we're paid to win games, etc. But a true mission of a college coach is not for the 1, 2, 3, or 4 years they're going to be with you. It's for the next 40 to 50 years of their life to help impact them and give them a blueprint for success. I think Cal does that and understands that. But now, because of the caliber of players he gets, he doesn't want to just impact the individual. He wants to impact their family financially by helping them become the best version of themselves. And if they're good enough to be a pro, to be that. And I just think it's a statement of truth. You know, we had Chris Beard from Ole Miss who, you know, Texas Tech, Texas, Ole Miss now. Chris, a Bobby Knight disciple. Chris wins every place he coaches. I don't care. You put him out, you roll him out any place, his team's going to win. And he is just fantastic. Wes Miller was someone, you know, at Cincinnati. This is a rising star in the profession. And, man, can he teach and coach? So we had him. You know, Matt Painter, we've known for years. We've done programs with him, with his staff and players, with our Coaching You on Campus stuff. We love Matt Painter. But Matt Painter came there with a little girls AAU team as his demonstrators, and he freaking taught his Purdue offense like Zach Edey was there with the girl 5'6" and as a center. And I'll tell you what, I got so excited. I'm saying to myself, that's phenomenal. His misdirection and the way to approach man-to-man offense is just phenomenal. And you'll see P.J. Thompson, just his assistant, just a stud. And so happy for him. We've watched him since he was a player and his development. But I just think this is stuff that, you know, we're really getting to see now how we can impact people. Matt McMahon from LSU, who we get to see all the time since we live here, just a great, great coach. And Dusty May, who we've been friends with for years, just the new coach of Michigan. Dusty was at FAU, known Dusty for years, and this guy, he's one of the nicest human beings that's in coaching, and just a delight to be around, and he is going to absolutely crush it at Michigan, in my opinion. So for us, Jake Dibbler, the new coach, you talk about on-the-job pressure to get a job. His friend, Chris Holtman, getting fired, you know, literally, you know, with 6 games to go, and this guy gets an audition. Oh, yeah, by the way, in a few days, you're going to have to go against the number 2 team in the country, Purdue, and he upsets them in the first game.
Right.
You know, and he wins, like, you know, he goes 6-2 through the rest of the year, gets the job full time when they were out there planning for his replacement, and he just did so well. He gets the job. And Jake is a young guy, but he is a flat out going to be a really great coach at the Ohio State University. So for us, it was just a fabulous week.
OJ can apology as well because as we were speaking to him before he goes on, you made the comment to me. He said, "Oh, Jake's got a little Scotty Scheffler situation on his hands this morning." So I jumped the gun. I said, "Oh, did we get arrested on the way to the facility this morning?" Fantastic, awesome. And then he goes, "Oh no, his wife's actually pregnant. She's about to pop it.
She's delivering that day, maybe." Yeah.
So I was like, "Well, honest mistake, all good." But we're happy for Jake and his family as they welcome another little Diebler into the world, and appreciate him taking the time for sure. But the more you say this, Brendan, we there was too much. There was too much in this. We're going to have to go back and clip up some stuff from, maybe some of the non-basketball stuff and put that out as a podcast in the next week or two to share with. I
love that.
It was too good. It was too good to keep to ourselves.
We'll share that with everyone, and then hopefully as the summer goes on, and as we talk about all the time, the beautiful thing about our profession is it's only 12 months a year. It's only 365 days a year, and it's only 24/7 as a coach. There are no days off. The good Lord let us learn every day and to gain knowledge. And so we're just trying to be a facilitator for you. And so I think, you'll find the app so good for you this summer in your learning. And these are our adjunct professors that you're getting to hear and you're going to get to learn from. So we're excited, Zach, about this.
Yeah, no question.
Today we're going to be joined by ESPN analyst Jay Bilas. And he's going to do our annual NBA draft preview. 22 years he's been on the NBA draft for ESPN, ABC. I think you're going to enjoy his comments and stuff. So after a quick message from our sponsors, we'll be back with the great Jay Bilas. We're thrilled to have our longtime partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball on board as sponsors of the Coaching You podcast. Dr. Dish machines are undoubtedly the most user-friendly and advanced machines in the world of basketball today. Dr. Dish has completely revolutionized and reimagined the shooting machine to provide the best solution on the market. Join top programs around the world like Duke, North Carolina, Florida, and countless others and upgrade your shooting machine to Dr. Dish. Dr. Dish machines are the best way to increase purposeful reps in your program to get players better, faster, while tracking progress along the way. Dr. Dish provides so much more than just your standard shooting machines with custom training, pro trainers, and coaches on demand, real-time and detailed analytics, and top-of-the-line drills and workouts. If you're looking to take your program to the next level, look no further than Dr. Dish for the best basketball training machine in the world. If you have an old machine that's just collecting dust in your gym, did you know that you can trade that in to Dr. Dish for up to $1,500 off and get a new dish? Make sure to give our friends at Dr. Dish a follow at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter and Instagram for great daily drills, workouts, tips, and inspiration. Or contact us at drdishbasketball.com. Don't forget to mention Coaching You or our podcast for $300 off your purchase. Coaches, are you looking to take your game preparation to the next level? Then Fast Model Sports is the perfect coaching software for you. With FastDraw, build an organized library of plays and drills and create professional playbooks to share with your players and staff. You can also download over 9,500 free plays and drills from our Playbank directly to your FastDraw account. Looking for a better way to build your scouting reports and want to include video? With FastScout, build custom scouting report templates to prepare your team best for each individual opponent. Plus, did you know with the latest updates from Fast Model Sports, you can now include video with your FastScout reports and share with your coaches and staff all within the FastScout mobile app. The combination of FastDraw and FastScout is by far the best way for you and your coaches to create winning game strategies and effectively communicate them to your team. Over 10,000 high school and youth coaches trust Fast Model Sports products to help their teams reach their goals. To order, go to fastmodelsports.com. Use code COACHINGU15 to get 15% off any FastDraw or FastScout products. Remember, Go to fastmodelsports.com. Use code CoachingU15 to get 15% off any Fast Draw and Fast Scout products. Hey, welcome to another Coaching You podcast with the Coach Brendan Suhr and our longtime friend and just incredible star now, my friend, Jay Bilas from NCAA basketball, ESPN, and next week doing the draft. Welcome, my friend. It's been a long time.
Coach, it's great to see you. Thank you for having me.
You know, Zach and I were just going over some of our Coaching You live videos, and it was the one you spoke at in Orlando years ago. That was really one of the great clinics we've ever done, and I believe that might have been the time with the lockout. You know,
Yes.
when the NBA locked out, and all of a sudden we had, next thing you know, we have 17 NBA head coaches and assistants on the sideline. And you mentioned taking notes like they had never seen a basketball clinic before, with respect to high school and college coaches. Learning is an amazing thing, you know.
And it wasn't intimidating at all for me to speak and have Eric Spoelstra and Doc Rivers and all these NBA coaches taking notes. They were probably just doodling to make me feel better, but it was very kind of them. But you make a great point. And I actually was just reading a book on this on lifelong learning. It shows the humility of coaches at the highest level. I mean, I don't think great coaching knows a level. Some of the best coaches I've ever been around are high school coaches. But the great ones have an open mind and realize they don't know it all, and they're open to new ideas. It may solidify the way they already do it, but they're open, and because the game's always changing, and they know it. And I was really impressed by that. I'll never forget that clinic.
You know, that's about, you know, the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And you've been involved with the Wooden Award for years. And I loved Coach Wooden for who he was and what he taught us. And one of his favorite things is what you learn after you think you know it all. That's going to make you a better teacher, broadcaster, parent, etc. And I just use that as one of my foundational pieces. I am such a better coach than I was when I had the Bad Boys or the Dream Team. It's not even close. I screwed Isaiah Dumars and those guys compared to what I know now. It's not even close. And I feel good about that. And someone said, well, you're not even coaching a team. Yeah, but I'm trying to get better. You know, I mean, you know, so it's just a fascinating thing. And I know you go through that when you start out broadcasting and where you are today. And you, every time you're working with people as the play-by-play guy, you work with different guys, and some of them are the best we've ever had in the business. And you keep learning from them, right?
I keep learning from them, and I keep learning from the coaches and the players.
Mm-hmm.
That I think had I stayed in coaching, I was a grad assistant for 3 years under Coach K at Duke, and I had intended to spend my professional life in coaching, but a few things took me in a different direction. But I think if I had stayed in it, well, hopefully I would have grown. But I think my view at this point in my life would have been different of the game. When you're immersed in it, doing your own thing, even with the growth mindset, it's different than what I've been lucky enough to experience, where I go to all these different programs. The coaches let me into their practices, their film sessions, their meetings, their game planning sessions, things like that. So I've learned so much about the game from perspectives I've never had before. And, I've got pages and pages of notes. And, if I ever did something again, which I won't at my age, but if I ever got into it, I'd have a different vault of knowledge than I perhaps would have had otherwise. And I'm really grateful for that. I look at the game a lot differently now, with a broader view, because of all the great minds I've had the privilege of accessing.
So Duke is an amazing place for me, because when I was just coming out of high school going to college, Hubie Brown, my high school coach, was an assistant there to Bucky Waters. And he invited Fratello and I was 19 and Fratello was like 22, 23, down to be counselors at the Duke basketball camp. and to go down there and to learn. And Jerry West comes in as a speaker, still with the Lakers, comes in as speaker, probably got $150, right? He came in to speak, and you learn from him. And then all of a sudden, so UB's the greatest influence I ever had to get into coaching. Then after 10 years with UB and Fratello, all of a sudden I go to Chuck Daly, another Duke assistant with the Pistons. And so UB was technically the greatest coach I've ever been around. And so he had an amazing way of teaching. And so when I go up there, my first scout with Dumars and Isaiah and Lambier and Rodman, those guys, Chuck, we're playing the Knicks, and he says, okay, you're doing the scout. And I go and I say, here's how we're going to defend the pick and roll tonight. Here's Ewing, here's Derek Harper, Doc Rivers coming off the pick and roll. And Chuck says, hold on a second. And I'm like going, what the hell is he interrupting me for? And he says, Isaiah, how do you and Bill want to guard the pick and roll? And I said, I've been coaching 10 years in the pros. UB never asked a player what he thought. It turned my life around as far as the way to present scouts, because it wouldn't matter what the hell I thought. It was, were they going to believe in what we were doing? And it was the greatest lesson of all time. And Chuck was so brilliant at that. And that's where all of a sudden you learn. And within 6 months, everything I learned from UB and Mike flipped to Chuck, because he had a different way of doing it. And so I think it's fascinating how that can happen in life. I can remember some of our conversations years ago when you would talk to me about NIL. And it made so much sense because Michael Jordan had name, image, and likeness for himself in the NBA when the league wanted to own your rights. And it made sense. And you were preaching to the choir. You see what's happened now. Thoughts?
Well, it's been a long, long road to get to where we are now. But just going back to when I was in college in the early to mid 80s, I was on an NCAA committee at that time. I was an athlete representative on the NCAA's long range planning committee. And as a result, Brendan, I learned about NCAA policy. And truthfully, I didn't care for most of it. I felt like the system was designed to not only compete, to foster competition and to host it, but to make money off of it. And the athletes were cut out of the business completely. They were expenses only workers. And I felt like that was unfair. I felt like it was wrong. It was frankly morally wrong that every student I went to college with that was a non-athlete was allowed to earn or accept whatever they were worth in the marketplace in whatever endeavor they chose. And it didn't affect their status as a student. But I was told as an athlete that I couldn't earn or accept anything unless the NCAA told me it was okay, because of their amateurism rules. And as time went on, about that time in 1984, the NCAA schools actually sued the association so that they could be on television whenever they wanted. It was an antitrust case, and the schools won. And that's when money exploded in college sports, where the schools individually, if they chose, or by conference, could go out and market their media rights and sell them. And that's where coaching salaries went way up. That's where all these mega deals came. And there's really no difference between college sports and the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball, except the players are required to be enrolled in school. That's the only difference. And so I felt like it was unfair that the players were restricted in a cartel fashion to expenses only. And the players have sued, and they've won. And now we've got, at least now, there's NIL, so they can get that. The schools seem to think it's a mess. They complain about it all the time, but every game's being played on time. Every check clears on time. We don't have, they call it chaos, but it doesn't look like chaos when you open your TV guide to see what's on, what games are on. They're all on at the same times they've always been on. And the money's rolling in like crazy. So I think we're headed toward a time where players are going to be signed to contracts in the future. And it's going to be just as orderly as it is in the NFL or the NBA. And, going back to the Major League Baseball thing, it's amazing how the powers that be will say, hey, if the way we do it, the way we mandate it changes, everything's going to go off the rails. They said it in baseball when the reserve clause was invalidated and free agency came in. Baseball is more popular than ever. They said it in the Olympics when amateurism was taken out of the charter, and then you had professionals in the Olympics. The Olympics are coming up this July, more popular than ever, and the world still spins firmly on its axis. It's not a problem, and it won't be a problem when athletes are paid. Even with NIL, we're seeing record numbers and growth in viewership and all that stuff. College athletics is undervalued right now. So the idea that somehow we're headed toward this cliff when college athletics will cease to exist is just more, kind of doomsday hyperbole from the NCAA. It's just fine.
As an attorney, do you see, as I do, having been in professional league, the orderly conduct that we had in the NBA was through a collective bargaining agreement, where the league negotiated with the union of the players to get a system that worked, were rules that were followed, contracts, even a salary cap. This thing seems to me, the college, too big to have that, because I don't know how you could ever do that. And we have 30 teams, 32 in the NFL, to have over 100 minimum of high-level basketball. I don't know how you can get it under control and try to. I don't know what's going to happen. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, the collective bargaining agreements and the salary caps that are in the NBA specifically is really a partnership between the Players Association and the league for what's in everyone's best interest. So you not
Right.
only have a salary, you not only have a cap on specific salaries, you have a minimum as well. And
Correct.
and I think collective bargaining is possible in college sports. It may not be at the NCAA level. You could certainly have collective bargaining in specific conferences, and there's even some single entity collective bargaining that could take place. You're seeing it at Dartmouth. That's really single entity collective bargaining, where you collectively bargain. The players are unionized at Dartmouth, and they're bargaining with their specific school. And they're not just bargaining for money; they can bargain for working conditions and all kinds of stuff. I think a lot of this will be remedied when the NCAA sort of gets rid of this ridiculous restriction where the schools cannot pay the players directly. If the schools are allowed to pay the players directly, one, their antitrust problems go away, and each school can decide what they're gonna pay their athletes. It's really not that difficult. They
Hmm.
do it with every other person in their employ. It's not like they get together and say, "Hey, we need to get coaching salaries under control. So we're going to agree what the maximum coaching salary is going to be, and we'll bargain collectively with the coaches." They don't do that. Duke decides what they're going to pay John Shire, and then Alabama decides what they're going to pay Kalen DeBoer. It's really not that hard. And but they want to make it sound difficult, and that's why they're running to Congress for protections. But I think what Jeffrey Kessler is doing in the House case, that case recently settled, and the settlement has to be approved by the court. If the settlement's approved by the court, which is, not to get too far in the weeds, but it's like
Sure.
almost $3 billion in back damages plus, future revenue sharing of, I think it's up to 22%. It can be zero, but it can be up to 22% that the school can pay to their athletes going forward. If that's approved by the court, what's clear to me is the NCAA is going to take that settlement agreement to Congress and say, okay, the court approved this. Give us a law that says exactly this, so we're protected from antitrust. And we'll see what Congress does. But to me, it's just trading one illegal wage cap for a higher illegal wage cap.
Right.
And I don't see how that's going to work absent congressional approval.
Good call, man. Go to another topic, the portal, transfer portal. I know you must have some real interesting thoughts on that.
Yeah, the portal is really interesting because most people don't know this, Brendan. You do, but the transfer penalty, I call it, the when you have to, in years past, when a player would transfer in football, basketball, baseball, and hockey, they would have to sit out a year
Right.
when they transferred. They called it a year in residence, and I think it was an old vestige from when freshmen were ineligible. So once freshmen became eligible, it seemed kind of ridiculous that you would need a year in residence to get used to your new school. A freshman doesn't need time to get used to his new school, his or her new school. Why would a person with college experience need time to get
Right.
adjusted to a new school? It kind of makes no sense. I mean, the transfer restriction was in there to try to limit transfers.
Exactly.
Players don't want to take additional time in their careers. People generally don't want to be in school longer. They want to get out. Now being paid, maybe they do want to stay a little bit longer, and that's fine. But usually the schools want them to play right away, and the players want to play right away. But the fact that the transfer restriction was only in 5 sports, and there are 32 NCAA sports, maybe more, there was no principle behind it.
That's great.
And it was just a restriction to try to dissuade athletes from leaving one school to another. And athletes transfer actually at a lower rate than non-athletes do in college. Regular students transfer at a higher rate than athletes do. It's not ideal. I don't care for the portal, but the NCAA put the rule in, and they're having to live with it. Coaches don't like it. I don't think. I think they could be better regulated so that we have windows where the school could feel more protected with their roster, things like that. That makes pretty good sense to me. But unless the players are paid by the school, why should they be subject to essentially a non-compete provision in an employment contract when they're not employees yet?
Right.
If they're employees, I think you could bargain. If you sign them to contracts, sign players to contracts in the future, the players will bargain for money, and then the school can bargain for a buyout, like they do with coaches. If a coach leaves, the coach may owe a buyout to the university. That means the school that he or she's going to is not only going to have to pay that coach what they're worth, but they're going to have to pay their buyout. And sometimes the buyouts are too exorbitant for them. It's not worth it to them. It'll be the same thing with players, and it'll bring a lot more stability into the system.
That's a great viewpoint on it. I love that. One of the most interesting things that in your calendar, I would think, is the NBA draft each year. And you do such a great job on it. This year, I've been involved 45 years this month with the NBA. And when we first started 45 years ago, I had 10 rounds in the NBA draft. And we went to 7 a few years later when you were in college, 7 rounds. Then we went to 3, then 2. I'm looking at this draft, and I've never felt, and I know all the players, but I don't know who the hell anyone's going to pick. I can't figure out some places why they will pick them. And I can't even imagine working the draft other than, yeah, the guy's a really good player, but I really don't know what the hell's going on. For the first time, outwardly, I'm admitting it, but I probably didn't know what the hell I was doing half of the time anyway. But your thoughts on this year's draft? There's really good players, but your thoughts, though.
Hey, Brendan, it's the most interesting draft I've ever been involved in. This is my 22nd draft for ESPN. My first one was the LeBron James draft. And back then, I was working every summer at basketball camps, like the Nike Skills Academies, things like that. So I actually worked with a lot of these players. I'm too old to do that now, but I don't have my head wrapped around where players should go, because I think there's not the talent at the top that we would expect would be kind of a franchise type player. There's not a no-brainer at the top, like a Wembanyama or a LeBron or things like that, where you go, okay, it looks like the first pick in another year might be the 6th pick, if that in this year's draft. That's kind of a weird feeling. So I think it's going to come down to, a lot of times I'll go into the draft and I'll be thinking you take the best player available, but especially at the top. But right now, I think you're looking for fit. And what's the highest floor to some of these guys, rather than worrying about the ceiling? Because it seems like every player, as many positive attributes as they have, there are certainly areas of concern, areas of growth, or weaknesses, whatever you want to call it, that every player seems to have in this draft. There's not a no-brainer. But I was telling a friend of mine this recently. You hear a lot, and I'm sure you've heard the same. You hear terms like, this is a weak draft, or not a very good draft.
Exactly.
And maybe compared to other drafts at the top, that's true. but I really believe this, Brendan. I think if Jalen Brunson were coming out of Villanova this year as a junior, and Tyrese Halliburton were coming out of Iowa State this year in this draft class, we'd say the same thing. And those two, look how good those two have turned out to be. Every year, there are players pretty far down in the draft, whether the first round or into the second, that turn into all-stars and turn into outstanding NBA players for a long time. I think that's going to happen this year. But the question is who, which ones?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the beauty of this draft. We're going to have to probably wait 5 years to maybe less. But this is going to be a backward-looking draft where we're going to redraft this thing in 5 years going, holy cow, how did we miss on this? But I have no idea who should be the first pick to Atlanta, whether Atlanta should trade it and trade it to somebody and then go down to 4 and 8 and try to get 2 picks out of this so they get 2 good players rather than just one. And the fact that for the first time, the draft is now 2 days. So on Wednesday, the 26th of June is the first round. That'll be in the Barclays Center. The next day, the second round is going to be, I think, at 4 o'clock Eastern time. And that's going to give the teams more time not only to make their picks, because second round picks are important, but it gives them more time for trades. So this could be a really, really fun draft in that regard.
Are you guys working the second day also?
Yes, I'm not. I'm working the first day, but the second day, what I'm told, is going to be more of an like an NBA free agency centric show with the second round as more a backdrop, if you will. I hope that doesn't sound demeaning to the players, but you remember how the draft used to work. I mean, you do the standard first round, and then the second round went really quickly, and
2 minutes,
2 minutes between picks, and holy cow, that at my age, I'm thinking about when can I use the restroom next, rather than worrying about what the picks are and whether we're going to be in break and trying to catch up. So it's a chore to keep up with in the second round in the past, at least. I can only imagine how difficult it was for the teams to have to keep up with that in their draft rooms and make intelligent decisions in that short a time frame.
So I've gone through 8 or so mock drafts, which I never thought I'd admit to in my life that I ever looked at a mock draft. But who is some of the players that you've watched on film, whatever, or you've seen in person during your games this year that you kind of like? And because I agree with you, MJ went 3rd, and Kobe went 13th. And I remember Fratello and I trying to convince Stan Kasten, the owner of the Dodgers now, we want to take Karl Malone at 6. And he said, no, I want John Koncak as a backup center to Tree Rollins. And Fratello says, no, I don't care if we got Kevin Willis and Dominique and Cliff Livingston and Antoine Carr. This guy's going to be an all-star. Stan said John Koncak.
Well, and if I know you'll remember this, in 1984 when you had Hakeem Olajuwon coming out of Houston, Sam Bowie coming out of Kentucky, and Michael Jordan out of North Carolina. The great Stu Inman with the Portland Trailblazers, who was a magnificent basketball man.
Fabulous.
I was fortunate to know him. I know you knew him a lot better than I did. But Bob Knight told me the story, and I know he told it publicly, that Inman called him and said, we need a center. We're picking number 2. And he talked about Sam Bowie. And he says, Michael Jordan's the best player. Knight told him Michael Jordan's the best player. He coached him in the Olympics. And he said, well, Bob, we really need a center. And he goes, then play Jordan at center. Doesn't matter that you got Drexler already. Play Jordan at center.
Exactly right. Stu Inman had this great thing. He would say, who is Jay Bilas? He'd always ask, not who is Michael. He would say, who is Michael Jordan? Who is Jay Bilas? And that was his way of asking your evaluation. I loved him and miss him. But, yeah, I mean, and then, the Kobe and Kawhi Leonard's, at 15, 16. It goes on. And you just mentioned before Jalen Brunson, top 5 for MVP, and the guy goes in the second round.
Who would have thought that? I'm not even sure Jay Wright thought. I think a lot of people, myself included, were thinking, I think Jalen Brunson can play in the NBA. But you're going small guard. He did those back downs. Is that going to work in the NBA? Work. I mean, he's an all NBA player. and scoring
unguardable.
40 in these games. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
And shows how much the game has changed and how little, how little we really know. And it's not believe, because as much as, you just can't measure some of these things that players have that are going to make a difference. It's never been more difficult than this year, in my view, because you didn't need to. When you watch LeBron play, I watched him since he was a sophomore in high school. When you watched him play, you didn't need to have a basketball pedigree to know that was obvious.
yeah.
But it's not so obvious with some of the players this year, and there are areas of growth for each one of them. But boy, the positives are pretty good. It's just there aren't any no-brainers. There's no Wembanyamas in this draft.
Many of the drafts have the top two picks being, is it Risacher and
Risacher? It's Zachary Risacher.
I forgot you went to Duke. I went to a state college. Risacher and Risacher and Asar. Thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, Suhr is the big man. So he actually his older brother Olivier Suhr played at Wake Forest and and at Kentucky, and that is now with the Oklahoma City Thunder in their organization. But Alex Suhr is 7 feet tall, really long armed. He's I think primarily his main value is as a rim protector, defensive specialist. So I think in the future he could be an all defensive type player in the NBA. And he's got some offensive skills. He can step away. He only shoots 29% from three in the NBL in Australia, but he can make a shot, and I think he's got the aptitude to improve there to where he can step out on the perimeter a little bit. He's not just one of these all defense, no offense guys, but good athlete and has the ability to block and change shots and rebound, and run the floor, things like that. And then Risacher is not an elite. I wouldn't call him an elite athlete, but highly skilled, can shoot it, can handle it. I wouldn't call him a playmaking wing, but his handling and shooting ability is high level. It's just he doesn't fit the NBA profile of a superior NBA athlete. I mean, all of them are outstanding athletes. You can't be in the NBA unless you're an outstanding athlete. But a lot of guys like him that you would expect to go one or two, you would expect to kind of jump out of the gym and be setting records in the lane agility, things like that. That's not the type of player he is. And then another player that I think will be in the mix in the top three, but he could drop down. Who knows? Is Donovan Clingan from UConn, and he's a little bit of a puzzle for me, Brendan, because I'm still stuck a little bit old school in that he's more of a traditional big guy that blocks shots. And I think he rebounds well. He can set good screens and then roll to the basket. And he's got good hands. Not a super mobile guy as far as being able to switch out onto a guard and guard for a couple dribbles. His lateral movement isn't as great as you might hope. And he doesn't really knock down perimeter shots just yet and shoots under 60% from the free throw line. And in an age where you would like your big guy to be able to step away and stretch the floor, and be able to not just pick and roll, but pick and pop. That's not where he is right now, but he's still young. He's just 20 years old. And you remember back in the day, I mean, when I was in college, 22-year-old graduates from college and goes into the NBA. He's a rookie that's got a lot to learn and a long way to go.
Right.
And now if he's not a finished product at age 20, we're like, well, I don't know about this guy. I mean, it's amazing how sort of our timetable for players has switched when I'm not sure that anything's necessarily changed as far as how players develop. They're more advanced earlier than they were decades ago, I believe, generally. But it's not like your development curve changes. You're not going to reach your peak as an NBA player till you're 27 or 28. And I think a guy like Donovan Clingan has a lot of upside potential, right. but you don't really know just yet on the offensive side.
The other guy that Hurley coached so well, and ironically, I thought he was really almost a fifth option on their offense, but he's going to be a lottery pick, is Stephen Castle. Everyone seems to love him.
I love him too. I mean, Stephon Castle is he's uber talented, and I like the fact that he's tough and gritty. I mean, he's a great individual defender that can lock people down. I mean,
Right.
his assignment, I can't remember the exact number. I think shot 35%, and in certain situations it was under that. So you can put him on just about anybody, and he can switch and guard. He's tenacious and really good as a downhill driver, good in transition as a finisher. He's just hasn't figured out the shooting piece yet. I don't think there's anything mechanically wrong that he can't improve upon. And he got better throughout the course of the season. He started out the year injured. He's a McDonald's All-American and all that, but he was injured early on in the year. But when he came back, he and Klingon both had injury problems. But when they both came back healthy, UConn became an elite defensive team in large measure because of Castle as a perimeter shutdown guy and Klingon being able to protect the rim
Hmm.
and block shots and handle the glass. But I really like Castle. I would be very surprised if he's there past the top five.
Wow. Cal had three really good guards at Kentucky, and Dillingham and Reed Shepard seems to be going way, way up. You got to see them an awful lot, and I know you knew his dad and everything, and Jeff. But tell me what you think of Reed.
I was blown away by Reed Shepard, Brendan. I didn't see much of him in high school. And
Right.
I heard about him but didn't see him. And he, when I watched him play, I was like, this guy knows how to play, man. He shot over 50% from the field, shot 52% from three, made 75 threes on the year, and was a knockdown free throw shooter. For a time, he was a 50-50-90 guy. And I think he finished the year shooting 85, 86% from the foul line at a pretty high volume, especially for a guard. But he's really good in pick and roll situations. He makes really good decisions, so he can handle it like a point guard. He's an excellent passer, averaged 5 assists per game, had well over a 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio. And as a defender, I'm sure if you got truth serum into Calipari and his staff, they would have preferred that he spent more time kind of locked into his man responsibility, whoever he was guarding. But he played defense more like a free safety would play football. Like he
Hmm.
played the ball and he got a ton of steals. I think he averaged 2.5 steals a game. And he had multiple games where he had five and maybe more. But I remember games where he had five, where he'd shoot the gap or he'd be off the ball and he would take it away from a big guy that turned his head. Things like that. Just has a real aptitude for not just where the ball is, but where it's going to be. And not the most gifted laterally with quickness. So I do think he got targeted at times
Yeah.
where they would isolate him and go at him. But I think he proved at the combine that he's a sneaky good athlete. I mean, he finished top four in the standing vertical, and he was tied for number one in the max vertical. And he's a humble kid. He played it off, saying, "I don't know where that came from." But I saw him take it to dunk several times during the season. He's a good athlete, but the way he shoots it, I cannot imagine he's not going to be a valuable contributor in the NBA. We can sit here and talk about, he's got to get stronger. He's got to be a better individual defender. That is true. He's got to improve in those areas, and I think he will. But at his age, to be able to shoot it the way he does, he's going to be a floor spacing weapon in the NBA. And I think he'll go before Rob Dillingham, who's you coached Vinnie Johnson when he was called the microwave. I think we need to upgrade our technology because microwave is now old technology. Not to denigrate Vinnie Johnson,
No,
but
don't.
I think maybe he's going to be an air fryer or something. But he can
Well,
really score, and he can put points up in a hurry. I think there are times when you would say in a game, that was a wild shot, or I wouldn't have taken that. But I'm not sure you want to have a guy like that taking his foot off the gas when he's that talented. He's just small. And I think he got lost a few times defensively, but he can put pressure on the ball. He's super quick, super athletic. He's just tiny. And
Yeah.
but in today's game, smaller players are doing better than ever. You
Yeah.
know, 10, 15 years ago, we'd say, hey, he's not big enough. But in today's game, I mean, if you're good enough, you're big enough, and he's good enough, especially on the offensive end.
Another SEC guy, Dalton Connect, who, I thought one of the great stories in basketball this year, and you got to see him a lot. Your feelings on him?
Roy Hobbs. He's Roy Hobbs. Came out of nowhere. He's playing in
Hello.
Northern Colorado, and honestly, I had heard of him, but the reason I had heard of him is I was watching Synergy on other players that I thought might be drafted, and that's how I saw him.
How about that?
And honestly, I didn't give it much thought when I saw him. But he transfers to Tennessee, and he's about 6'6", I'd say, but he's got the wingspan of a guy about 6'9". Really good shooter, and high release, beautiful form, gets into it really well. He can shoot off the catch, off the dribble, gets to the rim. And when you knew he was a lottery pick was when I think it was a Maui fundraiser. Tennessee went up to Michigan State and played a game on television,
Great game.
and you're
Yeah.
watching that game going, whoa,
Yeah.
like Dalton Connect. Like you're going, that guy's a lottery pick, and he's going to be one. And throughout the course of the season, especially when they got into SEC play, he's putting up 39, 37. Our biggest criticism is when is this guy going to crack 40?
Yeah.
He was unstoppable, and certain teams, I'm thinking of one in particular, actually had connect rules as to how they were going to guard him and how they were going to attack him on the defensive end. He was that good. You just don't see guys that often. And he scored more points in a season at Tennessee. He scored the most points in a season since Allen Houston. And that's going back a little ways. He's an amazing offensive player, and I think he's improved as a defender under Rick Barnes.
He's going to be the highest pick they've had at Tennessee since Allen, who was the 11th pick.
Yeah.
He'll be higher, I think,
I think so, too. I think he'll go in the top 6.
Wow. Kid I really hadn't heard of this year, the kid Devin Carter from Providence, and it's going to now also be a lottery pick. What your feelings on him, Jay?
He's one of my favorites. He reminds me a
Really?
little bit of a bigger Jose Alvarado.
Wow.
He's all over the place. He's an excellent guard rebounder. Another guy who's like got freaky long arms and really impacts the game defensively. As a perimeter player, he blocks shots, blocks them on the perimeter and blocks them from behind on drives. He's really gritty and tough as a defender, and just constantly moving, constantly competing, constantly going what seems like 100 miles an hour, at max speed. He started his career at South Carolina, and the biggest knock on him was he was an inconsistent perimeter shooter. And this last year shot just under 40% from three. I think it was 39, if I remember right. Was Big East Player of the Year. And the first, he's one of 2 Big East Players of the Year that Providence has had. The other was Chris Dunn. But I like him a lot. And because he plays so hard, and he's a two-way player, excellent in transition. Can I sit here and project him as an all-star? No. But I'm not sure how many players you can do that in this draft, if any. But can he be a valuable piece on a really good team? Absolutely. And he's the type of player that will do whatever it takes. And I feel a little bit that way about Stephon Castle from UConn. There's some talk now that he said, okay, I want to go in and be a point guard in the NBA. So if you're not going to have me as a point guard, I don't want to be there, that kind of stuff. And it's one thing to say that, but I really believe that Castle's the type of player that will do whatever he is asked. And I believe that, and because he did it at UConn, and I believe that of Carter too. He'll do whatever he is asked.
Yeah, I have a little knowledge about Castle, and Castle, he's unbelievably quiet. He didn't say it; his agent said it.
Yeah,
which is a dumbass thing to say. All right, he just Castle wants to play. And if the agent knew what the hell he was doing, he would say he's a player. Shit, who cares? Point guard. There is no positions anymore. Cody Williams, Jalen Williams' brother, right? Wow. I mean, I draft his father for crying out loud. Like a racehorse. My God. I mean, that guy's got genes. I mean, having two kids like that, and he might even go higher than Jalen did, you know. But what a player he has become.
Very talented. And another guy, I don't know where these guys get these arms. I mean, my arms were exactly to my size, which is very unfortunate for me. I remember, nobody said length back when I was a player.
Never,
It never
never.
came up. It didn't matter how long your neck was. It just matters how you can impact the game with your length. And I always remember like playing against Sam Perkins going, they go, well, he's only
Right.
6'9", like 6'9". Have you seen his arms? Like he
Yeah.
can tie his shoes without bending down. He plays like he's 7'4". But Cody Williams went to Colorado and was one of the top players coming out of the high school class his year. He only stands about 6'7", but his wingspan is over 7 feet. So he's really long, lanky. He's one of those guys I think needs to get stronger, but he's a really good finisher and very skilled. Has a ton of talent, and he was very well coached, I think, by Tad Boyle and his staff, and he got better throughout the course of the season. The concern you have is he didn't rebound at a high rate at Colorado, and I think he's capable of being a much better rebounder. So that's something that I think he needs to improve upon, and I think he can be a much more consistent perimeter shooter. But when you've got skills and that sort of what I would call aptitude, he's
Yeah.
going to get a lot better. And I always think about this, Brendan, like I was really fortunate when I was a grad assistant at Duke. Grant Hill was there,
Yeah.
and as
Wow.
a freshman, like I'm of the belief that Grant Hill's the best player Duke's ever produced to this
Wow.
day. I think he's the best
Yeah.
player.
I can see
And
that.
yeah, like his first 6, 7 years in the league, he was Sandy Koufax. I mean, his numbers compared to only a handful of the greatest NBA players of all time. And then he got into the injury thing and still played like 18 years in the league. But if you took Grant Hill at age 19 and put him into the draft, people would have said, great athlete, great in transition, can get to the rim, all that stuff, but he can't shoot. Well,
Right.
by the time he got to be a senior, he could shoot.
Yep.
And that's the thing I think with Cody Williams is right now that's not a strength of his, but it's not something that he's incapable of improving upon.
Sure.
And I think he's got a ton of value, and he's one of those players in this draft that like I think he'll go in the 10 area, give or take. But if he drops down a little bit, he's one of those guys that you're going to go, that's a steal. There are going to be a number of players in this draft. Isaiah Collier of USC is one. He was thought at the start of the year
Number
that he
one.
was the one pick.
Right.
And somebody, because he got hurt, I don't know what it is about, because I'm guilty of it like everybody else. Somebody gets hurt. Anytime somebody gets hurt, you cannot reasonably expect them to be the same when they come back.
Sure.
It takes time to come back from an injury. And he didn't play as well as he was capable of playing, and his team didn't perform as well as he was capable of playing. And so that sticks in your head, and you're like, I don't know. And well, we knew before he got hurt. We were saying he's the number one pick. If he drops out of the lottery, he's going to be a steal. He's got a ton of ability. He just hasn't figured out the shooting part yet.
And I saw him and Castle, they work out together in LA. And if you walked into the gym, you say, Isaiah Collier's the best player in the gym.
Whew. It's like a Volkswagen with a head on it.
I mean, and that's the thing is that, and you know what? Derrick Rose used to say this. Derrick Rose, from the time I swear he was playing for Cal, he knew he was a star. He knew he was a star from the time he grew up in Chicago. And Isaiah was like that. Imagine when they know they're stars, it carries on throughout their career. And I think Isaiah knows he's a star, Collier, and it'll be interesting to see. He's my player that's going to drop and will end up being a star. I might,
I agree. I
yeah.
agree.
They're all going to say they're going to overthink this thing rather than freaking picking the guy that they should have evaluated.
Yeah, and you can't teach dynamic. Like he's got a dynamic quality that catches your attention right away. And his ability to get to the basket and to make to find people, even when it wasn't in his mind when he took off. Because he can pass. I really like him a lot, and I'm a fan. Now, who knows where he goes, but
No, that's the thing.
they're gonna be players like we talked about. They're gonna be players in this draft that their draft position is not going to be indicative of how good they're going to be long term.
Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting there when I was with the Knicks, and we were in the low 20s, and I said to Isaiah, we can take Rondo, we can take Lowry, Kyle Lowry. I mean, they're pretty darn good picks in the 20s, right? you know,
Yeah,
and both champions, and I think that's a thing that sometimes now that you look on. The kid is it Bazulis?
yeah, Bazelis, yeah,
Yeah,
Modest Bazelis.
he played with the Ignite and stuff like that, and I saw him in the rookie game and stuff. Your thoughts on him?
I get more questions about him on where's he from because of his name. He's
Yep.
a Lithuanian background. Both his parents played. They played in Lithuania professionally. His mom and his dad.
To me,
But
that's
he,
good. That's good
yeah,
because
it's
I love
great.
Lithuanian players, right?
But he was born here, so he's born in Chicago and grew up in Chicago. Went to high school there and chose the G League route. He's a very skilled player, very good size, very good length. And I think he's another guy that is probably undervalued a bit, but could wind up going top five. I wouldn't call him the most consistent perimeter shooter, but he can make a perimeter shot. And it's just, does he make them consistently? And I think he's gonna get that because he'll refine it. It just needs to be refined. It doesn't need to be reworked. But very, very skilled and a very good player. And I think he's got a lot of value in this draft.
Ron Holland, when he's coming out, went G League route, and he was projected to be maybe the best high school player last year and stuff like that. He got hurt and then opted not to play to maybe hurt his value and stuff. But now I see he's climbing back up the board. Thoughts on Holland?
You don't see athletes like Ron Holland very often.
Wow.
He's a Texas kid from Duncanville, and he's one of these like outstanding run and jump athletes that can really get to the rim and really finish. But another guy that shooting is not his strength right now, and it's something that he needs to improve upon. But I think he can. Now, does that mean if he works at it, he's going to be Steph Curry? No, but he doesn't need to be that.
Right.
But with his ability to play in transition, to put the ball on the deck and get to the rim, and then to finish in traffic when he gets there, I think he needs to tighten up his ball skills because he turns the ball over a little bit too much. But that's something. I don't know how you feel about this, but I'd rather have a player that you tell to tap the brakes every once in a while than a player you have to rev up, and you don't have to rev him up.
Amen. Jay, I know you're going to Maine first, but then when you come back to New York for the draft, 22nd year, that's Hall of Fame stuff, brother. And you're already in the damn Hall of Fame. So, I mean, it's great. And I love listening to you on that. Appreciate you doing this so much. And I know our listeners will love it and stuff. So thank you once again. Appreciate you so much. And enjoy the draft. Enjoy your work next week as you always do. And appreciate you so much.
Well, my pleasure, Brendan. And you are way too humble. You said before about you're not coaching anymore. What you're doing is you are coaching coaches now. And that has more long-term effect, I think, than actually coaching players, because you're touching more players by teaching coaches how to do this than perhaps arguably than when you were coaching players. It's an amazing, the ripple effect of what you're doing is incredible. So thank you for all you're doing for the game.
I appreciate Jay. And as always, have a great summer, great off season. The best attorney I know. Thank you so much, Jay. Appreciate it.
You need to get out more if that's true. Meet some more lawyers.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.